You're listening to the Business Mike podcast. Amazing interviews with entrepreneurs and industry thought leaders.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business Mike podcast. And joining me today is Jonathan. Jonathan, it's good to have you on the show. To get us started, can you just let everyone know a little bit about yourself and how you got into this industry of customer experience?
Yeah, Dowley, thank you. So pleasure to be here. I'm from the UK originally. I live in Belgium now. I spent around 10-15 years as an IT project manager, then program manager, delivering loads of technology projects, Oracle, SAP, all of these, lots of technology projects, new websites, upgrades, whatever you can think of, migrating to the cloud, all of this stuff. And then, when I first started, say like 15 years ago, it was hard to deliver projects actually. Most times they were delayed, most times they were over budget. Some of them stopped after 1 year, 2 years, it was very bad. Then we started delivering using the Agile methodologies like Scrum and all of this. We started delivering faster, so we actually started managing to deliver projects finally. And that was a good advancement in the technology space. And then, I became like an Agile coach, so I was helping organizations, been doing that for like maybe 6 years, helping them deliver faster and manage to get results, and that was good. And then at a certain point I said, okay, we're delivering, but we're often, not delivering stuff that's valuable. We're just delivering stuff because it's on the sheet that needs to be delivered, rather than, focusing on what's really important. And at that stage, I took a step back and I realized that, everything that we've done it for the benefit of the business and also for the benefit of customers. Then I realized that, we had a lot of problems around, lots of silos and all of this. And I realized, like, when you actually have an organization that's focused on bringing value to the customers, it brings everyone together. Yeah. And then, coupled with that, all the issues with, the way it is now with subscription models, etc. And the fact that people just, switch between products and services. It's hard to even tell the difference between, an insurance company A or B. Do you see what I mean? So all of this, it just made me realize that the customer experience is now becoming like one of the most critical factors for businesses today. And it's only going to increase. It's just obvious. Yeah, it's obvious. So that's sort of how I got into this area of customer experience. So I set up a platform. One of them is called CX Brussels, and it's in Belgium. And basically, we bring together organizations. They send through their employees to get training, to do workshops. We do roundtables for leadership. We do company events where you can walk around and visit. You might visit a bank, or you might visit a newspaper, organization producing newspapers or some stuff like this, and see how they are managing the customer experience. And then we did the same in Dubai, CX Dubai, and then also through CX-Centric, that's my main consultancy organization. We do a lot of global workshops and webinars, etc. And then now we're pushing more in the African continent as well. So we do some Africa specific stuff. So we've done like Ghana and Kenya and Zimbabwe, and we're going to do South Africa over the next few months. And then hopefully now we're in contact with, so we have to do Uganda obviously, and yeah, we're pushing there in Africa, trying to just raise awareness for what we're doing, because we've seen good results in this space. And then on top of that, we're also expanding in America as well. So later on this year, we'll be in 4 states there as well.
Fantastic. Actually, I didn't know you had an IT background. I've got an IT background as well myself, specifically networking. But I find that in what I do, that knowledge is helpful because technology is becoming more and more embedded in the way operations are run in companies. So I'm curious as to how your experience from the IT side is helping you and how you're leveraging that to deliver the services that you do.
Yeah, definitely. Like the IT background has helped me a lot because if you look today, when you map the journeys and you look at the touch points, a lot of them are digital now. Yeah. In fact, organizations are pushing more over to the digital side because it's easier to scale. Also, it's good because you can easily measure it, so yeah, it's happening anyway. We know that, most people refer to them as digital transformations. Yeah, so they're transforming their service into a digital space. So it's a big there's a big demand for it, and it's something that most organizations have been going through and are still going through now. So it helps because, I know how to set up a project, how to run a project, I know the sort of problems in a technology project. And, when you look at things like voice of customer and you've got to install a system and then look at the data and do migrations and all of this stuff, because I've got the background in that, it's a bit easier. I can give more realistic advice to clients instead of just coming in and selling a dream.
Yeah. No, I expected that would I expected that would be the case. And some of the ways in which the technology can help, of course, is with the softwares that you use to develop CX frameworks. And that brings me to the question, which is when companies are trying to develop and implement CX frameworks or customer experience frameworks, they sometimes struggle. They don't know how exactly to execute that. So what advice or guidance would you propose for, CX leaders in terms of developing and implementing a framework that they can use to help them deliver the best customer experience?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of challenges. Like companies come to us, a lot of times the biggest one is just retaining customers, retaining clients. Like literally, it's difficult. Yeah, so we work with different organizations. Some might be in financial services. We've worked with some insurance organizations. We've worked with banks. We've worked with even fundraising as well. Like literally, some large charities, etc., need to keep donors donating, so that they can keep doing the good work that they're doing. Literally, retention is probably the biggest point. Yeah. Second one, the other issues that they have are things like figuring out the right technology, as you mentioned already. Like technology is so important. Figuring it out. So I'm just listing some challenges here, so the listeners, not leaders, can get a feel as to what the sort of challenges these guys face before they even think about these frameworks. The other one is like getting data as well. So that's the other one. Like there's so much data that it's possible to get so much data. So you've got to have those, those listening posts so that you can get the data and information, and then, to be able to get something meaningful out of it, that's going to help grow your business. You've got all of these problems and it's like, okay, in terms of, where does an organization start? And for us, we've developed the CX-Centric customer centricity assessment. So basically it's an assessment that we've created, and literally, I'll give you an example. We conducted that assessment with an organization last year. It's called Federal. It's an assurance company in Belgium. Around 450 people in that organization, and they wanted to start on customer experience, but they were sort of divided. A lot of the leadership didn't see the benefits. So literally, we went in there and we conducted some workshops and they were cross-functional workshops with leaders from across the business coming in, and we said, okay, we're going to do this assessment. We're going to explain the concept. You tell us where you are in terms of leadership, in terms of employee experience, in terms of building a community, etc. So we've got our own we've got a framework. We went through that. Literally, we did these 3 workshops with them. We gave them a report. We presented to their senior leadership, and it was from that they could basically see the opportunity. They could see investing here, this is the benefit for us. This is the benefit for our organization. It was obvious. Yeah, it was so obvious because in the workshops, it's them who are, we've got our framework, but they're providing the information. So we're just relaying back what they're saying, and then they could clearly see. So I think doing something like that assessment is very, very helpful. The other thing that I think is helpful is having like a clear vision. What experience do you want to provide? Yeah, so who is the customer? Who's the target customer? What are the different personas, and what is the vision? What is the experience that you want to provide? These might sound like basic questions, but these are very powerful questions, because once you have that solid base answered, it makes it easier. So it makes it easier when you're working out what processes to put in place. It makes it easier when you're working out how to measure the results. It makes it easier when even to work out what technology you want to implement as well. So having that strategy is probably, it's very, very key and very crucial. And a lot of organizations struggle and miss this part out as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point you make, because if an organization has leaders who are not necessarily customer experience expertise, but they can actually see the vision in terms of what they need to do and where they need to improve, then that obviously is a huge help to them. I'm just curious as to whether in your experience you've seen or have heard of companies leveraging artificial intelligence. Like ChatGPT is obviously a big one that everyone's talking about. But have you seen something that's sophisticated being embedded in customer experience solutions or anything of that sort?
Yeah, definitely. Look, so I mentioned that we are quite big on Africa. So one of the organizations that we partner with is Masakane, and they focus on natural language processing. Yeah, and especially for the African continent. Yeah, so actually we've done some work in collaboration with them, and also with Google as well, doing speech analytics, etc. So basically it's like about being able to analyze speech, put it into text, and then analyze those keywords to find out, what are the, from a customer experience perspective, it's like, what are the main challenges? So, for instance, one thing we're working on now is being able to look at, analyzing customer service information. So all the calls that are coming in, and then finding out what are the key challenges, what are the things that are coming up time and time again. Are people happy? So doing sentiment analysis, or are they frustrated? That sort of thing. So there's a big push with artificial intelligence that's going a lot further than just, for instance, the normal chatbots. And I think also for the African continent as well, it's also important to be able to tackle these local languages. And that's what companies or organizations like Masakane are doing. They're looking to push to be able to make sure that from an artificial intelligence perspective, Africa isn't left out. And it's not like, in order to have a good service, you have to be speaking one of the common European languages like English or French or Spanish. Instead, you should be able to speak Swahili and still get that AI coming in and evaluating and making sure that the service is good. So this is one thing that we are doing. And as you know, because I've got the IT background, it's easier for me to launch these projects. So so we're in touch with some telcos at the moment to work on this. This is one thing we're doing, and we hope to push a lot more this year and see a lot more value for more organizations, especially on the African continent with this.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. One of the challenges actually that comes up a lot when implementing these CX initiatives is adoption or acceptance by, the organization. In other words, the culture sometimes resists these changes. Like you mentioned earlier, of course, you have your framework, the leaders look at it and they agree to go a certain direction, but then the employees might not necessarily be on board with that. So how, assuming someone is listening to this and they have their initiative they want to implement, but come across challenges with their culture at the organization, how would they navigate, something like that?
Yeah, so I think it's not an easy thing because people underestimate the importance and the power of culture. Yeah. Uh, so it's not an easy thing. Obviously, we have and that's why we started there with the culture assessment. We literally created that assessment because we realized it was so important. Last year, we had just over 300 organizations. We took that assessment, and from that, we've been able to create a benchmark. So basically, you can tell in terms of customer centricity from a culture perspective. This is where your organization is in comparison with the global trend. Yeah, so that's one of the benefits. So basically, I would suggest taking that assessment. That's probably the best way, and also involving as many people in the organization as possible in that process. So don't just take it for yourself and then say, okay, these are the results. Let others come and join, and let them respond to the questions, and let them take the information in. That's probably the best way. That's worked in the past, and it's working time again for us. That's probably the biggest. The other one I would say is basically trying to develop a shared understanding of the customer. This normally comes through having the voice of customer program, where actually you're listening to what customers are saying, and also you're giving them more opportunities at different touch points, and then you're looking at the behaviors, looking at the results and stuff. You're looking at the usage as well, and putting all this together. And once you've got that good view of the customer, you want to share that across the organization, so that those in different departments, because normally we're speaking more about medium and large organizations here, those in different departments will have a shared understanding of that customer. So at some point, they've got one view. So that marketing normally looking through their lens, because they're at the top of the funnel trying to raise awareness and then try and do the first conversion. But then you've got finance who are looking to just make sure that we're profitable, etc., etc. But once you have that shared understanding of this is the customer, these are their challenges, this is where they are today, these are the sorts of things they're thinking about, it sort of brings the organization together. And that's one of the big things about customer experience. We're trying to break silos across the organization, because with these silos it sort of limits innovation, it just limits growth overall.
That brings me to the next point of discussion I want to talk about. And you had touched on some of the outputs you've done there with the State of Customer Centricity report. But before we get to the report, I wanted you to just share with us about your organization, that's CX-Centric. How did how did it come to be? What's its history? And what kind of things do you do? What are your objectives? And what key milestones have you guys finally met on your journey so far?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, I've got a few organizations. So CX-Centric is the main one for consulting and training, etc. Also, we've got CX Brussels and CX Dubai. So those are platforms where we basically provide opportunities for people, so employees, to learn, share, and advance in customer experience. So those are those platforms there. Through CX-Centric, we've done a few things. Number one, we have something called CX-Centric Conversations, where these are normally international interactive discussions about customer experience, where we provide case studies, and we showcase any organizations that are doing well, so others can learn from them, that sort of thing. And then we make it interactive, so that they're almost like workshops. So we've done around 15 to 20 of these, and it's more like a global thing. We've had maybe people, around 150 people join our events, that sort of thing. I'm talking about each event. So those are the CX-Centric Conversations that we've been doing. And then, as I mentioned, now we're more local. So we're doing more local stuff rather than just global stuff. So we've hit a few countries in Africa. We've already got Dubai and Belgium, because we're already doing this. And then, so later on this year, we're also expanding and doing events in the UK and also in America as well. Last year, we released the State of Customer Centricity, or basically the beginning of this year, State of Customer Centricity 2023, we had over 300 organizations who basically took part in this and let us know this is where we are. It's based on our model. This is, we basically established a benchmark in customer centricity. We hope to do that again later on this year. The other thing that we've done is we established customer experience summer school. So basically there's 2 tracks for this. There's the customer experience leader and customer experience analyst, and we will be executing that this year in June. So if you know anyone who wants to learn more about customer experience, feel free to let them go to the CX-Centric website, and then they can sign up there and register for the summer school.
All right. Thank you for mentioning that. Actually, I have a question on that, the trainings. So for someone that wants to sign up, does it tell them where they need to be in terms of the experience they have or the role that they play in the organization? For instance, the difference between a leader and an analyst. Do you provide the requirements, so to speak, before you can sign up?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, we just ask them, why do they want to join? What experience do they have currently? And from that, we can tell them, because actually, it's not to say that a leader is better than an analyst, and it's not to say that you want to move from an analyst and move up to leadership. For me, they're 2 separate paths. So with a leader, it's more customer experience leadership, and it's management as well. How are we managing things? With the analyst, it's more looking at, okay, what's the customer journey? What are the pains? What are the gains? How can we implement a voice of customer program? How can we interpret the results and get something meaningful out of it? They're the 2 basic distinct disciplines that need to work together. So we more look at what experience you have today currently, and what you're doing in your current role, and what would you like to be doing, and then we say, okay, we recommend this one or that one, basically. So that's how we do it.
Right. So let's move on to the State of the Customer Centricity report, which is a very good report that you shared with me. I found it quite interesting. Some of the results that came out I didn't expect. So from your perspective, maybe can you just tell us about the report and what made you do this? And were there any results that came from this report that maybe you didn't expect? Was there anything there that caught you off guard?
Yeah, so basically, we've had our model for a long time, yeah. So maybe not too long, maybe like 2 years. We created this model around measuring customer centricity, and we created a assessment around it. And basically, we're giving this assessment. Organizations were paying to take the assessment, and we go there and we do workshop, we do a presentation to the leadership, and we were getting good results. It was working. And then it was after a conversation with Bruce Temkin. Bruce Temkin, he's well known in the CX space. He's some people call him the CX godfather. And he said to me, look, you should just get this out so that more organizations can see it, and can use it. So what we did is in September, we offered a free version. We offered a free version to a lot of organizations, and literally we had over 300 who filled it in, and then we were able to create a benchmark. So this was quite successful for us, because to get a benchmark is really important, because look, you always want to compare yourself to what's happening, and it's hard to know what's happening because it's a new field, it's a new area. So this was very a big benefit for us, and there's a lot of interesting stuff. Probably the most interesting was firstly just the idea of we asked what is the main challenge around technology, and I think 55% of organizations mentioned data, so business intelligence and getting value out of data. And so this is probably the biggest one, because and we're seeing it more and more of a challenge, because every day we are generating so much data across the world. It's just unreal. And many organizations, only a few years ago, since like in Europe you had the GDPR, regulations around data, etc., and a lot of other regions are following suit with this sort of thing. So it's only recently since that many organizations are taking data seriously and having strategies around this, etc. And now bringing this aspect of customer data as well that needs to be managed properly and then tied in with the other types of data. It can be a challenge. So this was probably the biggest thing that came through. The other thing was probably around employee experience. Literally, I would say that it's pretty much random in terms of like whether you are in a company that really works hard to provide a good employee experience or not. Literally, it was like there was no like one answer that was more higher than another. It was like does your organization work hard to improve the employee experience and listen to the employees and to do all this stuff? And it was pretty much average. So it was quite funny to know that. So most organizations, I would say, they are not very they are not proactive around employee experience, I would say. So that was probably another thing that came out. But there's loads, to be honest. Feel free to check out the report for those who are listening. I think each person who reads it, they come back with some other different perspective that I hadn't even thought of. So yeah.
No, absolutely. The one that stood out to me is that very one you mentioned about employee experience. I found that very surprising. Actually, I have it here. I wrote it on the site. It says 20% of organizations have a defined process for measuring employee engagement and motivations around improving their customer experience. So that I found rather fascinating, which you mentioned just now.
Yeah, because for some reason, like actually having right now is clear. Everyone knows this across the business community that actually it's very difficult to have engaged employees. So engaged just means employees that are engaging themselves, they are caring about what the business is trying to achieve. And that's part of the challenge of a customer experience leader is how can I engage the employees so that they care about the results for the customers. Yeah. So yeah, this is something that came out. So it's nice that you mentioned that, Dowdy, and so many organizations are having problems with this, having problems keeping their employees as well. Obviously, this is another major concern across the world. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll certainly put a link of the report in the show notes of this podcast, so anyone can just go ahead and access it. It's a very fascinating report. It's well rounded in all the areas of your framework that you talked about, the different aspects that you need to look at, and that the outcomes from your survey. It's quite fascinating reading. So with all your experience in customer experience, I know there are some people listening to this podcast now who are perhaps intrigued. Maybe they are business leaders, not necessarily customer experience leaders, but if someone has an organization and they don't know anything about CX or they know very little, what advice would you give them to take away from this podcast?
If you start, it's hard. So advice, I would say, start with an assessment. That's the way I would say, because then when you start with an assessment, it sort of just gives you a new lens, a new vision on these are the opportunities, these are the challenges, and these are the benefits. So, and also with the assessment, it sort of brings everyone together as well, and it's more something unique for your organization. So I would start there. I would always start with an assessment. So at least you can know where you are, and then you can work out where you'd like to be. That's what I would suggest, because then when you clearly know where you are and where the gaps are, and you've got the assessment there, then you can start having meaningful conversations and working out what to do and what not to do. I think the other thing I'd say is a lot of a lot of leaders and a lot of people in organizations, they think they know what the problems are. Obviously, a lot of them do, don't get me wrong, especially if you're in the front line, etc., etc. But I would say you want to try and back up your opinions. So, for instance, you should be using data, basically. So, voice of customer really helps. So, if you think the touch point is problematic, find a way of measuring what customers think about that touch point. If you think that a whole journey isn't going well and you think that you should do these improvements, find a way to measure and double check what the customers think about this journey and what sort of improvements they'd like to see. And, you know, getting that validation from a customer perspective can save you a lot of time, can save you a lot of money. So that's what I would suggest. These are quite high level, but it's just those basic steps that need to be taken to begin, I would say.
Right. And as we conclude the podcast, how can people connect with you? You mentioned the assessment. Is there a way people can reach out to you and learn how to do that, or where to find a way of doing that? Where can people learn more about your activities, the report? Are there any resources online that they can go to?
Yeah, so if you go onto Google, you can type in CX-Centric, that will get to the website. You also can type in State of Customer Centricity, that will give you the report as well. But yeah, if you go to the website, you can get everything there. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. We are on LinkedIn, so if you type in CX-Centric, you'll see us. Follow us, and then you can engage with us with our, the workshops that we're doing, or events, everything that we're doing there. So that's probably the best way. And if you have an urgent need, obviously you can just go to the website and fill in a contact us form, and we'll get back to you.
Right. So I'll be certain to put the links to all those things you've mentioned in the show notes, such that people can readily go and visit your website and all the other platforms on which you have, just by going to the show notes. But at the end of it all, Jonathan, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, for doing this podcast and sharing everything you have with us today. I'm sure the listeners will benefit, especially from the State of the Customer Centricity report. It was a very fascinating read. So everyone listening, just check that out. It's a good read. So thank you. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Dowdy, thank you. It's a pleasure. And thank you for the good work that you're doing. Yeah, it's inspirational. So keep it up, and hopefully at some point we'll meet you in Uganda.